What's going on? 5D Lifestyles, Talbott here. We're doing some 5D fungus. Specifically, we're talking about grain spawn. That's right, the process goes on. So this is the next step after doing petri dishes. So your petris grow out, and then it's time to pass them on to grain. All right, grain, why are we using grain? Because it's a wonderful medium. It's highly nutritious. All right, so it provides a great launch pad to pass on that spawn to either a final fruiting substrate or sawdust spawn, or to expand to more grain spawn, right? And also, once your pure, beautiful white mycelium grows through all that grain, each one of those little kernels of grain becomes a point of inoculation after you break it up and pass it on. That's nutrified and just this point of expansion and mycelial explosion. It's a wonderful thing. And so, as far as what I have to offer to the intellectual world of growing fungus, I feel like this is actually one of the best videos I can offer to you all if you're looking to do this at home yourself. The reason why I've been through a bunch of different ways to do grain, I feel like I have found a system that is both very easy, you don't have to think too much, and it works really, really, really well, because I will admit I've gone through a lot of fails with the old grain spawn. So you can use all sorts of grain. You can use wheat, barley, rice, millet, all sorts of different things. Really, you just want something that is a clean, high quality grain. Hopefully no pesticides, a clean source, somewhat fresh, hasn't been sitting for years. So I like to use it with holes on it because I find that it helps kind of protect the grain from getting too mushy, because you really don't want it too mushy. The trick to grain spawn is you just want just the right amount of moisture, but you don't want too much moisture so the grain explodes, and obviously you don't want it too dry so the mycelium can't penetrate. So the holes help to kind of maintain that perfect balance. Of course, you can do this without holes. I occasionally use brown rice. It does work a little different, but you know, you'll want to kind of tweak this a little bit. Your time of soaking and your time of cooking might vary a little bit due to the grain you're using. So play with it, pay attention, and you know, use your brain and go from there. This is just kind of a nice outline for you. So what is my method? All right. Number one, I soak it. All right. But before I soak it, I rinse it. So I rinse it 3 times. All right. I put it in a big mesh basket inside a big 55-gallon drum. I fill it with water, I drain it all the way out. I fill it with water, I drain it all the way out. I fill it with water, I drain it all the way out. So I rinse it 3 times. All right, that gets out hopefully any dirt, some mold spores, kind of cleans it initially. Then I fill it and I soak it. I soak it for 9 to 11 hours. I find 9 is perfect because, again, I don't want too much moisture in that grain kernel. I soak it for 9 hours, so I either do it late at night and then wake up early in the morning, or today I woke up, I soaked it at 6 in the morning, and now I can do it mid-afternoon so my cook is all wrapped up before I go to bed. All right, so just think about your timing. After you have soaked it for 9 hours, then you pull that grain right on out of here, all right? And then drain that water out again. Make sure your tank's clear, fill it up with the right amount of water, and then boil it, all right? Get that water hot. I like to boil it. You could bring it to 80 degrees and that will probably work, but I like to err on the safe side and boil it. The reason why I do this is I was having wet spot bacteria issues, all right? You know, if you have a contamination of green mold or black mold, it's very easy to notice. The wet spot bacteria takes you a little while to figure out, but I can guarantee you're gonna hit it at some point. Using these methods, once I've switched, I barely ever see that. The wet spot bacteria is exactly as it sounds. It looks like your grain's just a little kind of greasy and wet, all right? But really, the stinking bacteria has gotten in there. Usually the reason why sometimes endospores of this wet spot bacteria can survive the pressure cook. When you soak it, hopefully those endospores germinate, become more vulnerable, and then at a boiling water, you can kill them. For some reason, dipping in the boiling water for just 10 minutes seems to do the trick. I've had high success. Now, I don't know because that helps dry the grain or if it's helped killing the wet spot bacteria before it gets pressure cooked. Either way, it's working for me well. And so at this phase, I've got this pulled out. I've got my water boiling. Now I'm going to drop this into my tank for 10 minutes and then pull it out, drain the water out of this mesh, and then hit it on the table and spread it way out. All right, the reason why I like to do this because that grain gets hot, and then when I pull it out and spread it out, that steam gets off any excess water on the outside of the grain, because you want water on the inside, not the outside. So the steam helps to pull off any water. While that grain is hot, mix it as much as you can. Of course, if it's just a little bit of grain in a giant table, it's really easy to get that steam off and get the surface of that grain dry. If you have more grain and smaller table, you're going to have to do some mixing and try to take advantage of the heat and of the steam to get that water out of there, all right? After most of the steam's gone, it's kind of cooled down a bit, then you want to add your calcium sulfate, all right? This helps keep the grain so it's easily broken up, plus it provides the necessary minerals for your fungus, calcium and sulfur, all right? Things it needs. It's a mineral that you'll add through pretty much every phase, all right? So you want to add about 2 grams of calcium sulfate per pound of dry grain, give or take. You don't want to add too much because it's been shown that with a lot of calcium, that dreaded wet spot bacteria can survive the pressure cook easier. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, too much calcium can help it. You want a little bit of calcium, but not too much. So we got about 25 pounds of dry grain, so we're adding about 50 grams of calcium sulfate, okay? After we do that, we're going to mix it up real well. Then we're going to measure and bag it out, all right? Then take those bags and put it in the pressure cooker and cook it for 3 to 4 hours, 15 psi to 22 psi, about 250 degrees Fahrenheit. 3 to 4 hours, kills everything, let it cool, and then inoculate with Petri dishes. And it's just that easy. Watch it grow, and we'll talk about that further. So that's pretty much it. It is a great way. I've had high success rates ever since I've switched to doing my grain this way. Thank you for tuning in. If you have any questions, put them down in the comments. Do subscribe. And yeah, keep on rocking the 5D lifestyle and keep on growing the beautiful fungus because it's a wonderful thing to do. Thank you for tuning in. Ciao.